Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Care, a podcast where we unpack the issues, challenges, and innovations shaping the caregiving world. I'm your host, Annika co-founder of Lanta Care. Today, we're diving into one of the most pressing and sometimes overwhelming topics in home care: compliance. For many agency owners and care teams, keeping up with changing regulations can feel like a constant game of catch up. But here's the truth: compliance just isn't about avoiding penalties, it's about protecting clients, empowering caregivers, and building trust. Joining us today is someone who truly lives at the intersection of compliance and care, Maggie Dewey. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you for having me.
Maggie is a seasoned clinical operations and quality leader with over a decade of experience driving regulatory compliance and operational excellence across multi-site organizations. She's also a board-certified legal nurse consultant, expert witness, and a trusted partner for healthcare operators, legal teams, and compliance professionals. So now to start off our conversation, I would like to ask firstly, specifically for home care agencies today, regulations seem to be changing faster than ever. And from your perspective, what would you say are the top compliance challenges that agencies are facing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I actually see tripping up a lot of agencies are three main things. So, first, keeping up with constantly shifting state requirements. So, what's allowed in one state might be prohibited in another. And then, second, documentation, especially with like EVV. So, if
Mm.
your visit notes don't align with your billing and your EVV, you're going to have problems. And third, just making sure caregiver credentials and competencies don't slip, meaning like even a missed TB test or an expired CPR card can put an agency at immense risk.
Yeah, I think the first point specifically about just keeping up with regulations because they're always changing. And this is something that I became super familiar with when I founded Learn to Care initially
Mhm.
because I was doing the compliance research before we like kind of brought experts on board, and I didn't realize like how vast and in depth it goes per state.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many different variations, across each state. One state may allow one thing, another state doesn't. And so it's super important to keep abreast of what actually is occurring and the changes that are coming down the pipeline.
And then compliance often I've seen gets framed as kind of a tick marking, box checking exercise where you're just doing it to get it done for the sake of whatever the regulations are. But you've also emphasized that it's really about the quality of care. So, how do strong compliance practices actually improve outcomes for clients and caregivers?
Absolutely. So sometimes, just like you said, people think compliance is just checking a box, but it's really about the safety and the outcomes. So when you're validating those skills and you know the right person is delivering the right care, that can prevent harm. And when you document consistently and catch small issues like skin breakdowns before they become bigger issues, you're basically being proactive in your approach in terms of compliance. Additionally, when staff feel supported by fair scheduling and clear policies, they end up staying longer. So your retention is at a higher level, which means your clients get that continuity of care across the board. And so compliance really is what keeps clients safe and allows your caregivers to be successful.
And also something else is that many agency leaders, like whether it's administrators or owners, depending on the size, are really stretched thin. So what are some practical steps that agencies can take right now to kind of stay ahead of regulations without overwhelming their staff and then specifically to like get ready for audit season?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So, I would start with one accountable compliance lead and then continue to hold like a monthly short huddle to just review the basics. So, incidents, audits, expiring credentials, standardize your forms. Don't make caregivers fill out 10 different versions of the same thing. And then just being able to build a light audit calendar. So, check a handful of charts each month, reconcile them with the EVV. And then most importantly, use technology to your advantage. So automate reminders for the licenses, for the TB tests, for the CPR renewals, and it can save a lot of headaches in the end.
I really like that point. I think like what I take from that is because compliance is so vast and
Mhm.
sometimes it can be so overwhelming just because of the sheer amount of like administrative work that you have to do to document everything. So kind of having like standard operating procedures set in place and just being organized about it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, start simple, right? And then continue to grow the program out. Because if you're going to throw things at everyone all at one time and really try to stay on top of everything, it's going to become, overwhelming for whomever your compliance lead is.
And then being an expert witness, I would say in negligence cases, what are some red flags or mistakes that you see most often that agencies absolutely 100% kind of need to avoid when it comes to compliance as well as documentation?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So, in court, those red flags pop out very quickly.
Okay.
So, such things such as copy and paste notes that don't make any sense, documentation that shows that care was provided when the client was actually in the hospital, or plans of care that were never updated as a
Mhm.
client's needs have changed. Missed visits with no follow-up, aides doing tasks outside their scope, like managing medications without proper delegation. These just aren't technical misses. They're the kinds of gaps that put clients at risk and agencies in real legal trouble.
And I'm just curious, have you seen this more like quite a lot happen like more than one would expect?
I absolutely have, especially late documentation with no reason as to why the documentation was late, or the fact that we're documenting on clients in the home while actually they were in a hospital stay. When the notes and the dates don't add up, it's definitely a red flag.
Okay, understood. And then kind of looking ahead, what trends do you see shaping compliance and quality in home care over the next few years? And how can agencies kind of start to prepare now to keep up?
Sure. So I think we're going to see a much tighter oversight on documentation and EVV as the future continues on. States and payers are already auditing these things closely. So competency validation is another big one. It's not just about having a license on file anymore. It's about proving that people can actually provide the care and that they have the skills to do so. Another big thing is technology. So AI, remote monitoring, mobile apps, those are going to play a bigger role, but agencies are going to need to implement some guardrails around privacy and accuracy alongside of those things. So, my overall advice would be to build that living compliance playbook now, run mock surveys a few times a year, and make QAPI, so our quality assurance and performance improvement, a part of your culture. And if they'll do these things, or if they do these things, they will be ready for whatever comes next.
I like that. I like the idea of having like a playbook. Even just at work, we kind of for every department, we just have a playbook and we're like working on refining those. And I think that's the best when everything is just written down. There's processes in place for this kind of administrative, like heavy administrative and documentation work. It's
Yes.
the best way forward, kind of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, providing your associates with a playbook, right? Developing that, and you're ready for whatever comes down the pipeline. We always say every day is a state day. So you never know when they're going to pop in. You never know when you're going to receive an audit. And so you always want to be prepared and ready to go. And even your frontline associates should understand that where they're able to find that information in the event that they are asked, right? We never want to say, I don't know. That's not the right answer. It should always be, let me find out for you.
Understood. Well, on that note, our conversation here ends today. Thank you so much for taking out time to speak with us. It's been a very valuable conversation, and I feel that you've really shown us that compliance isn't just a burden, it's a tool for building stronger agencies and delivering safer, better care. And for our listeners, if you're leading a home care team, please take Maggie's insights to heart, embed compliance into your culture, empower your staff, and remember that every regulation ultimately comes back to protect the people that we serve. Thank you again, Maggie, for sharing your expertise, and to our audience today for listening. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with another agency owner or caregiver who's navigating these challenges. Until next time, thank you for listening to Beyond Care.